Okay. Well, I am Karen, this is Kendra, and this is Bill, and our client was the Christian radio station JQ99, and so we're going to talk a little bit, we'll give you a little background information on the company. We'll talk a little bit about their target market, competition. We'll walk you through all the different aspects of our research, our different goals, and what we came up with, and then we'll wrap things up with our limitations and conclusion. So, just to give you a little background information, JQ99 is, like I said, a Christian radio station. They're based in Zeeland, Michigan, and their listening audience encompasses Kent and Ottawa counties. It's owned by Lancer Broadcasting Company, and they purchased that station. It used to be a country music station quite some years back, and they purchased that and then converted the format over to a Christian radio station in 1997. So up until that point, they didn't have a whole lot of competition. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but that has since changed. Their focus is to provide some family-friendly music to the West Michigan area, and they are considered a contemporary source for faith-based music.
JQ99 has a very set target market, with it being a 34-year-old woman. This ideal woman, she's married, she has children. These children are generally enrolled in Christian schools. She's a very family-oriented mother and wife. She's a frequent churchgoer. The lifestyle habits of the ideal listener: she drives a minivan, she shops at stores such as Target, and she's also a very active member in the community, with community events and activities. The ideal situation here is she's tuning into the JQ99 in the minivan, driving around town with her kids, with her husband in the car. She's tuning into JQ99, and this sort of further exposes the family to this, which widens their audience base. Like Karen said, when they first started out, there wasn't a lot of competition in this industry until recently. Now there are 6 major competitor local stations here, with the main one being Cornerstone's WCSG. They're the largest station in the area in terms of listening audience. They play similar music to JQ99, and often people get the two stations confused with one another. Not only do they have local competition, they also have national competition. They do have streaming music on the internet, and a lot of their competition is derived from internet music, such as Pandora, Spotify, even YouTube. JQ99 has recently seen a decrease in their listening audience, which we sort of developed these research questions from this fact. The first one being, what are the attitudes of current Christian music listeners toward the genre? Second one, what are the attitudes of non-Christian music listeners toward the genre? And then our last one was very specific to JQ99. What are the attitudes and perceptions of listeners towards JQ99? The research design we had, initially we wanted to have primary research, developing a survey, which we did. We wanted to submit it through SurveyMonkey. The company we were working with, they agreed to purchase the upgraded version of SurveyMonkey because our survey was a little lengthy, more than 10 questions. They also agreed to purchase a contact list through a third party to purchase email contacts of Kent and Ottawa counties, so we could further gather information regarding listeners and non-listeners, how they felt towards the genre and radio station. The secondary research we used a lot of internet databases for this through Davenport, and also we just tried to weed through and gather information and data through surveys that were previously performed by companies such as Dunham & Company. There were actually quite a bit of surveys that were performed in sort of more or less on a national and generalized basis in relation to our topic.
So based off of what JQ99 was looking for, from our research questions, we came up with 2 separate hypotheses. The first one was listener attitudes, lifestyle, and faith affiliation or non-affiliation determine the genre of music and the station that's chosen. And then our second hypothesis was based toward JQ99, and that was the perceptions and attitudes of JQ99 are influenced by lifestyle, interest, awareness of the station, music preferences, and location within that listening range.
We're going to jump into some of our results, and these are based on the secondary research that we conducted, again looking at previous surveys taken and different reports that have come out. We found Arbitron, which is kind of the industry-wide report for radio. We found that to be very, very helpful. I want to look at some of the radio industry growth. We found some pretty encouraging statistics and trends. Currently, there are about 242 million American adults listening to the radio on a weekly basis. It's a pretty big number. It's about 93% of the total U.S. population. And there's been a pretty steady reach for the past few decades in terms of listening across all genres. But recently, Christian radio has really seen some pretty tremendous growth. It's really being accepted into the mainstream of listening. So that's something that's very encouraging to hear for JQ99. To further that, Arbitron really noticed the growth among younger listeners. So the 12 to 17-year-old category now accounts for about 23 million weekly listeners. That was something that was pretty, I guess, something that's pretty new to the industry. So that kind of shows some supporting facts, I guess, for some potential growth there with our company. In terms of diversity, Black non-Hispanic audience is adding about 200,000 listeners, more so than the last time that these numbers were given. So that's 200,000 more than last year. So that's a pretty big increase. If you look at that number, 200,000 more on a weekly basis, if you add that up for an entire year, that's a pretty big amount of growth. And the Hispanic audience has shown the most dramatic growth, however, and it now accounts for a total of 39.5 million total listeners on a weekly basis. So the younger age group, the Black non-Hispanic group, and Hispanic audience, those are three pretty big groups that are showing some really positive growth in the industry.
Okay, so when we first made our survey, we made that based off of the lifestyle trends, some demographics, consumer attitudes and behaviors, and ethnic and religious affiliation. Unfortunately, we were not able to administer the survey like we originally planned to, but we were able to find some other demographics found in secondary research and quite a few statistics. So 2 out of 5, which equals to about 43% of adults said that they have listened to a Christian radio within the last month. And the number of listeners of Christian stations has increased over the past 2 years. 56% of the older church-going men and women tune in for the music, while another 40% listen for the sermons and teachings. And women between the ages of 18 and 44, they're the ones that are less likely to attend church regularly, but they do happen to listen to actual Christian music and Christian radio more often. 65% of the listeners of this genre tune in several times a week, and then 29% listen to it faithfully every single day. 1 in 4, or 23%, they say that they don't listen to Christian music just because they're simply not interested. And 20% say that they're interested in other content such as like sports or talk shows. And then 11% noted that they get their content somewhere else. Along with that, we found that the primary listeners of Christian radio are between 45 and 54, and they're more so politically conservative. And 71% of listeners attend church regularly, and 1 in 10 do not attend at all. And basically that number accounts for 7 million individuals within the United States, and the amount of people that tune into the genre every day amounts to about 20 million.
In terms of listener and non-listener preferences, people who listen to Christian radio generally tune in for two reasons. They enjoy the music, or they like the teachings and sermons that are presented on Christian radio. The group that tunes in for the music, that encompasses about 56% of the total listening base of Christian radio. And these are predominantly women aged 18 to 44, which is again right in JQ99's target market. And these people, like Keandra said, they're less likely to go to church frequently, but they do tune in to Christian radio. There's about 40% of the total audience that tunes in just for the sermons and teachings. This audience tends to be split evenly between men and women. And they are 55 years and older, generally speaking. These people are normally retirees, and they attend church frequently, and they happen to be very loyal to Christian radio. Non-listener preferences, there's a wide variety of reasons that people don't listen to Christian music. First one being they're just uninterested in Christian content. Their initial perceptions of Christian radio do come into play, and if they happen to be bad, they may not listen to it. Some people just prefer internet radio. They enjoy the freedom to be able to pick their own songs. And then, like Keandra said, they prefer other programs such as news, talk, sports radio. And then a lot of people just simply don't want to listen to Christian music because they just prefer to get their content elsewhere.
And some other interesting findings. A big portion of our secondary research had to do with technology and the effect that that's having on the radio industry as a whole. There's, of course, I'm sure we can all notice this, a huge increase in the popularity and the reliance and the use of personal devices, smartphones, tablets, MP3 players. It's really revolutionized the way that we function in day-to-day life, and it's also affecting the way that we access music. Right now, 40% of all Americans listen to music on a personal device, and that amount is expected to double by 2015. So that's pretty big increase there in just a couple of years from now. An audio consumption survey that we found, it showed that 40% of tablet owners and 56% of smartphone users are listening to music on these devices. And to break down the smartphone users a little bit more, 65% of this smartphone group here, they are using internet radio as their main source. So Pandora, Spotify, iHeartRadio. This is pretty significant. If you take a look at the graph here, this trend just shows some, like it's going to keep going here. It's on a pretty steady incline. And so that's having a pretty significant effect on the radio industry. Another factor is that these devices are being used in the car. So now people are tuning into the internet radio while they're cruising down the road, while they're in their house, while they're on the go. Whereas the car used to be the main arena for traditional AM or FM radio. People are instead now accessing music through internet-based options. So this is a pretty big implication on the entire radio industry. And consumers are enjoying the whole on-demand aspect that we have at our fingertips with these personal devices. They can customize and personalize their music experience based on their mood, based on their preferences, the style, and they can, like Phil said, kind of pick an artist and create a radio station based on that. So this is definitely a big source of competition for radio right now.
And with our research being basically Christian-based, religion played a big factor in what we did find. Just because the amount of individuals that live in Canton-Ottawa counties that consider themselves Christians, that could affect the awareness and likelihood of them tuning into JQ99. So what we found is that in the USA as a total, that 50.2% are part of a religious congregation, or that they're an adherent. And that here personally in Grand Rapids, that 52.9% are affiliated with some type of religious congregation, so we're slightly above the national average. And then we found some more statistics. I don't know if you guys can really see them. But out of that whole, 6% are part of the Reformed Church in America, 16% are part of the Christian Reformed Church in North America, 38% of the Catholic Church, and then 40% fall into the other category of other random denominations and non-denominations. So with our numbers being slightly above the average, it's clear to see that JQ99 has a lot of opportunity to expand their efforts with those denominations. And also another piece of research that we found had to do with radio signals. And we found a list that had the rankings of different radio stations in the greater Grand Rapids area based on their signal strength. And basically there were 13 stations listed on the strongest AM stations list and 20 listed on the strongest FM stations category. And there were different stations, most of them came from Grand Rapids, but there were also quite a few from Wyoming and Kentwood. And then there were also a few from Rockford, Walker, Holland, Greenville, Muskegon, and Zeeland areas. So JQ99 was not on that list at all. And seeing that there are other radio stations from the Zeeland area with a strong signal and a tower, JQ99 should definitely consider that so they can reach out to their target audience more. As far as recommendations for JQ99 go, we highly suggest that they actually administer our survey. It's a very thorough survey. We've pretty much covered everything that they asked us to. And it's really relevant to exactly what they want. They should also purchase the email contact list through the third party. We were originally going to purchase that list from Info Group USA. And basically they were originally going to give us 7,500 residents that live in the Kent-Ottawa district. They range between 18 and 60 years old, both males and females of different religions and ethnicities. Or if they didn't want to purchase a list that big, then they can purchase contacts. They're 10 cents a contact. They should also consider offering an incentive so that more people will be likely to take the survey. Originally on ours, we said that they would give out a $50 Meijer gift card and select a winner randomly. But when we talked to Brad, he also talked about possibly giving out a free iPad. So we thought that was a pretty big incentive, so people would be more likely to actually take the survey. And then, like I said previously, to just increase their signal strength.
There were sort of a lot of limitations with our project, with the big one being just a lack of primary research. As you mentioned earlier, we weren't able to submit the survey as we wanted to, which gave us a lot of need for secondary data. And this secondary data was very generalized, which was another limitation. Just wasn't specific to the area and the specific perceptions of JQ99.
So based on this, we just want to wrap up by saying, that, like Phil just said, we have a very broad look at the industry as a whole, but we aren't really able to, I guess, really accept any of our hypotheses based on the lack of primary research. But all the pieces are in place to do that, and so I think that would be a great tool for them. And that way they can really take a look at what they're seeing right here in this area, and they can draw a correlation between the decrease in listening and awareness that they're seeing. They can connect the pieces and make a plan and maybe make some changes based on what they find specific to Kent and Ottawa counties.
Anybody have any questions?
The paper, since I haven't read the paper yet, is the whole survey there that Brad can,
Yeah.
like you had recommended to implement?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Appendix A.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else have any other questions? Thank you.
How long?
1921.
Was it?
Yeah.
contest, I think